Well, I keep learning something new every single class period. That's for darn sure. I see that the last class I didn't see the chat board. In this class, there it is sitting right in front of my face. It was buried up underneath the live stream feed. Oh wow, man! I don't know. Getting used to this technology. I'm an old man, dude. Trying to do the best I can, but anyhow, as you come in, please make sure that you sign in and say hello so that I can take down your attendance this afternoon. We only had, it looked like 11 people for the earlier class, but as it turned out, we had a lot more than that. So I don't know, bro. I don't know what's going on, man. Oh, Jennifer Garcia. Hey, Jen, what's going on? Let me go ahead and write you down real quick. And there we go. All right. Oh, wait a minute. Jennifer Garcia, Jimmy. Okay, I'll put them both down. Let's see here. The Roy. Oh, Diego. Man, I was like, who's the Roy, baby? Who's the Roy? Diego Garcia. Diego Garcia. What? Diego Mejia. My bad, my bad. The Roy. I like that. Natalie Lorenzo. What's going on here this afternoon? Glad to have you in here. Let's see here. The Roy. Hey, Professor. That's Schwaneezy to you and me, baby. That's Schwaneezy to you and me. Welcome this afternoon. We'll let people get on here for a couple minutes. One of the things that I'm most concerned about at this point in time, it is afternoon, boy. I'll tell you what, where I am is still morning time. I'm all confused by the time. I'm really concerned with people knowing where the syllabus is and how to read it. What do you mean you're trying to share it? I think it's available. I don't know. Anyhow, Janine Valverde. Don't I know you from somewhere, Janine? Anyhow, it's good to have you here. Actually, I'm doing really well. I had a horrible case of insomnia last night, but other than that, I'm doing pretty fantastic. Why won't they, Jamie? I don't understand why they won't see the live stream. Because you're here. And it seems like there are other people who are here, so I don't understand. It's always at the same place. But, you know, offline, you can go ahead and hook me up with what you know that I need to know. Sabato. I love that name. I've always loved that name. Don't know how to say it properly, but wait a minute. Hold on a second. Please, please. Okay. So I see that some of you are going from one class to the next, and that's okay. You know, actually, I don't mind that at all when we do it that way, just as long as you're there. Brittany Herrera, hello, Brittany, what's going on? Amanda Canton, yeah. Oh, there you are again. Super. Melisa, that's a great name, Melisa. Napolis, whew, I could use that name. Schwaneezy, who has that name? Jimmy Garcia. Oh, okay, thank you, Jimmy. I'm just. You don't even know how amazed I am that I could even put this on live stream. Shoot, 2 years ago I couldn't even turn on my cell phone, man. This what do you call it, this smartphone. Couldn't even turn that thing on. Let's see, Camilla. What's going on, Camilla? Nice to have you here this afternoon. I think we might have you from the other class, but that's all right. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. All right, let's see here. Oh, I see. Okay. Amanda Page. See, I don't know any of this stuff. Let's see. Amanda Page. Page. What class you in, Amanda? Let's see here. Isaac with a Q. I'm not even going to try to say that name, homeboy. Let's see. Cuyano. Yeah, I'm with you. I try to enjoy every moment anymore. I'm going through like a personal evolution. I'm really proud of that. But in any case, let me just say real quick that with the assignments, I know that a lot of you send it to me through email. Oh, Amanda Goldenberg. There we go. But that's okay. I don't mind you coming in another one. Quijano. Okay. Let's see, Goldenberg. Where are you? Alright. I don't mind you sending it through email, but here's what I found, is that when I went to grade them, it was an absolute nightmare for me to even try to go through the emails because of the fact that and it's not your fault, if you didn't exactly say, hello Denise, didn't exactly tell me which section you were in and which class, you know, I'm thumbing around going through literally 400 emails, well not 400, about 160 emails, 140 emails, trying to figure out who's in what class. But the ones that went through the course messages, there were no problems at all. So I'm just trying to figure out, because I don't know, I really literally don't know, because what I see on my side is different than what you see on your side. Because I hit that drop down box, and it has like 80 different things I can do, and it says course messages. But I do know that for this class there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you who did use the course messages, and it worked just fine. Maybe one of you can call me maybe on Thursday and hook me up with the solution as to how I do that, because I would like to know how to do that. But in any case, the other thing that I wanted to discuss just briefly was how, you know, I don't mean to put it to you this way, how easy the assignment was. And I received, again, I don't know, 600-700 emails, text messages saying, I'm confused with what to do. I'm confused with what to do. I want you to understand where I'm coming from for just a second, okay? The place where I come from is I literally want you to think for yourself, okay? I want you to take these assignments. I want you to own the assignments. And then I want you to go ahead and take control of it. So something like the assignment that we had due this week, this past Tuesday, really was, you know, it really was I am a, and then a son, a daughter, whatever. And then you listed 25 of those type of things. And then I am, and you put down 100 characteristics. I am smart. I am funny. Like some of you said, I am rude. Some of you said I'm mean. A couple people said I'm an ass. I'm like, what? You're saying what? And so I took a look at it, and I found out a lot about you. But most of you were able to come up with 100. And then all I wanted you to do, once you put the 3 asterisks next to your ideas, then I wanted you to take a look at those and define and identify who you were, right? Just in a paragraph, 4 or 5 sentences, no more than no less, and then go ahead and construct your response. Now, one of the things that you could have cheated with, excuse me, one of the things that you could have cheated with is I have that little 8-minute video in the announcement board, and it's called Who Am I? Not the long lecture, but the Who Am I, the short one with the little video that goes with it. And if you had gone through that, you'd have been able to shape your response a little bit more. So in any case, let me see, Valverde. I don't know if I got it through there. I don't have it as graded. Oh, by the way, all I'm going to do, let me just explain how grading works. I know everyone wants an A. I get that. And everyone wants a B. Nobody wants to fail. Because of the time it takes to grade, what I'm doing is I'm just responding with a letter grade, okay? And the letter grade is going to explain to you, it's going to be kind of like a map. When I come in and I do the live stream, or if I do an asynchronous class, I'll explain what the different grades mean. For example, at some point when we start doing the real papers, you might get an A- over a B+, right? And you say, well, what does that mean? Or you might get a B over B- or something like that. And what I'll do is I will explain to you what that means. If you get an A, you hit it, right? It was structurally strong. You know, you had concepts in there. Everything was focused and tight. That's what I'm looking for with that. If you get an A+, that means, hey, it was pretty much flawless. If you watch that, hey, Jamie, if you watch that little video on how to write a great paper, that little 2.5-minute video, that's dope, baby. You got to watch that, because that is the one that really, in all your classes, that is going to separate you out from all the other people in there. It will make you, even though some people don't agree with me, it will make you one of the top 5% of the writers at Miami-Dade College. It's a very simple formula. It's a very simple process. And let me tell you something. You try it, baby. It's going to work. It's going to work really well. So in any case, that's kind of where I am. Now, the paper for next week, let me just explain that real quick. It's just like, and well, it's not just like, it's a thought exercise, all right? And, you know, how am I going to grade you saying I'm a sister, I'm a daughter? How do you grade that, right? You can't get too carried away with what that grade's going to be. Oh, I am smart, I am funny. Well, okay. How am I going to say, oh, that's B- because you're smart and funny? No, I can't grade it that way. So all I can do is take a look at the structure of the paragraph you wrote. If it was just horrific, then maybe an A- or a B+. But other than that, you're going to do just fine. Now, this paper coming up, it's a lot different type of thought process than the one from last week, all right? It's not terribly difficult, so don't get caught up in the confusion. Forget the confusion. I want you to own your thoughts when it comes to what you do at the assignments, all right? So on the one coming up, what you're doing essentially is you're imagining what your life looks like in the year 2040, all right? And you're going to either write the letter to yourself based upon today and what you project it's going to be, or you're going to write it to yourself then and explain how you got there, which direction you want to go. And if you get real creative, you go in both directions. And to me, I don't care. But there's a component of it that is going to require a lot of critical thinking, and it's the critical thinking that I'm most interested in. How can you take a simple exercise like what does your life look like in 2040 and break it down in a systematic way to make sense of that? That is something that most people aren't going to do. However, now the assignment really is designed for you to use that to set the course of your life. You're at a great age where if you have a plan right now, then you can execute that plan and end up in a place where most people will never end up. Because most people, they allow the wind to blow them around, and rather than taking control and developing a plan and executing the plan, what they do is they just kind of wait, oh, there's a job opening here, there's one over here, well, let me go for that one. Your friend says, try this. Oh, okay, I'll try that. Next thing you know, you're just bouncing around. And that's a tough way to go, especially as our economic system changes right before our very eyes. Jessica Figueredo. See, I can never say these Spanish names correctly, but I do try. The Roy. You know what? I'm not Roy. I don't want to talk about not to be mean, but I don't want to talk about the WhatsApp right now. I'm not allowed on it, and so I'd much rather us stay focused in on what we're doing here with this class this afternoon. You all can have a separate discussion after class about that because I do think it's a great tool, and I wish, and you know what, I'm actually going to sneak back on there around week 5 or 6, okay, because I think it's very helpful for me to see where the points of confusion are and then go ahead and make changes right there on the spot. But for now, I just want to stay focused over here on what we're going to be discussing here, which is basically human nature, right? At this point, I don't know if any of you did the 9/11 lecture that I did last week. It was impromptu. It wasn't mandatory, but somebody in one of the classes had requested that I do it. And I said, well, you know what, that'll be interesting. And as it turned out, I thought it was actually pretty close to fantastic. And in addition to that, a lot of the stuff that you're going to be covering in the social environment class actually played itself out really nicely in that particular video. So it's available in your class announcements if you want to check that out. But when we take a look at the terrorism in particular, it is definitely tied around human nature. Okay, so if we take a look at the basic tenets of what is human nature and what is common sense, human nature really is something that we think exists, but it really doesn't. You're going to find that through the semester, I'm a major subscriber to this idea that everything is socially constructed, right? What you see in front of you is not necessarily what is real. And just because you can look at it right in front of you, just because you can see it right in front of you doesn't mean that you know what you're looking at. And this is for everybody, Camilla and everybody else. Listen, every written assignment you have for the whole semester is due on Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. All right? This isn't just for Camilla, this is for everybody. Look, I got hundreds of questions on this. Every written assignment is due on Tuesday at 11:59. Camilla, it's not about you. I'm glad you asked it because other people have those questions. And you don't see it because, you're not on my phone watching the text messages. That's another thing. Janine, you're correct. This is for everybody. Watch the syllabus, all right? The syllabus will tell you which week we live stream. It will tell you what is due. So you really want to take a look at the course calendar. That's where all of your answers reside. Now, I want to stay focused in on human nature and common sense at this point, all right? Because, awesome, Elisa. I hope you like it. Dear Mama, I'll tell you what. I haven't mentioned this yet, but there is a movie production company that wants me to write that book as a screenplay because they want to buy it from me for 15% of 15% of the cost of production, which would be a $750,000 check, but it's hard to write a screenplay. I can write a book. I just finished writing a book this week. But man, writing a screenplay is a whole different issue. So Melissa, I hope you enjoy that book. I hope you all enjoy it. It's going to be kind of, it's going to be eye-opening for a lot of you, right? So we look at human nature and common sense, right? Human nature, some of us, when we watch the news, especially when we watch the news, you're welcome, we say, you know, because everything we see is negative, or at least it feels to me that everything is negative, or at least the majority of it's negative. And if you watch the news enough, what's his name? Grabner, he writes this idea that, here I'll write his name down, that we have what is called a mean world syndrome. And that is, essentially, we think the world is mean. So if we think the world is mean, then what that means is we make an assumption that human nature is evil, right? People are greedy, people are selfish, people are self-centered, people make their decisions based upon what is in their naked best interest. If you subscribe to that perspective, then what you're really doing is you're subscribing to what Thomas Hobbes calls, from Leviathan, is that we are a negative people, we're evil, right? Which means we're inherently bad. Now the reason why it's important to understand, if that's your rooted philosophy of what human nature is, that means the way that you handle people who transgress is you're going to use a law and order campaign. You're going to punish them. Because if people do something based upon evil, then they're nasty in their nature. So we go ahead and punish them, right? That's law and order. That's Thomas Hobbes. Some people believe on the opposite extreme that we're born a blank slate. It's called tabula rasa. Let me write that down. Tabula rasa. And that is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who made that. Rousseau, E-A-U. He made the assessment that we're all born a blank slate. So we are inherently good by nature, but the problem is we get misled by life, right? So his essential idea is, if we figure out what misled the individual to becoming a miscreant, to becoming engaging in malfeasance and illegal behavior, his argument is that if we change, you know, their surroundings, if we change the way they look at the world, if we redirect them, then in fact they can be good people again. So when you take a look at these philosophical traditions, whether people are inherently good or people are inherently bad, the decision that you make will certainly, oh, it's stated in there, sorry Natalie, it is. There's somewhere, all that's in there, so don't worry about it. Don't worry about that right now, okay? Yeah, the paper should be about a page, right? But it's in there. Don't worry. Okay, let me talk to Natalie for a second, because this is really important. This is really important. It's something that I usually address later. She wants to know what is the paper length. Let me put down my notes for a second where I stopped, okay? Because this is actually critical. All right, let me just put down in my notes where we stopped. Okay, no, it's okay, Natalie. Actually, I want to answer this because this is tremendously important, and not just in terms of this class, but it's tremendously important in the way in which we look at the world. All right, so hold on a second. Let me finish what I was saying, and then I want to come back to you, Natalie. So if we subscribe to people being evil, what that means is that we follow law and order, right? Policing in the 1960s and 1970s was law and order. Get tough in the 1980s was law and order. So when Donald Trump says that we need to manage people who are inherently evil and acting out of rage or what have you, or acting out of anger, he's just using a philosophy that is dominant on the right wing. Okay, and he is saying that you punish wrongdoers. This is no different than what we did in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. It's the exact same philosophy. And if you look at the point where he was growing and maturing into the Donald, that was a period in which the philosophy was predominant. So all he's doing is utilizing what existed back at that point in time. It's not something new. It is something based upon the philosophy of Thomas Hobbes. People, and he acts on it, right? When he called North Korea Jin Young-ho, when he called him Little Missile Man, what he was basically saying is that this dude is evil, right? So we got to keep him under control. He's a law and order guy, right? Now on the other side, what we'd have is, if we say that somebody is misdirected and misled, then what we have to do is we say, okay, if they're quote-unquote sick, they're unhealthy, then what we have to do is give them the right medicine, and the right medicine will make them well again, okay? That means rehabilitate them. So if you believe in what Rousseau is saying, you follow a prescription of rehabilitation. If you believe that people are inherently evil, you follow a prescription of punishment. So essentially what you're doing, it doesn't look like there's a philosophy, but there's a philosophy behind every single thing you do. And those philosophies are based upon how you define human nature. Now let me come to Natalie for a second, because this is really important. I mean, it seems like a very innocuous question. I didn't see in the syllabus. I want to know the paper length or the word count. Natalie, it's a perfectly acceptable question. And as a professor, I shouldn't be flippant and say, no, it's a great question, okay? And here's my greater answer. Maybe, I don't know. It's my answer, all right? There is a difference between, oh, hey, Simon, let me put you down. Wait a minute. Are you in this class? I know I see your name. I went to school with a guy named Steve Lau, and so I just wonder if you're related to Steven. Okay, this is really important, all right? In our education system, we have trained you and we have taught you to think in terms of paper length. How long should my paper be? How many words should it be? I feel like cursing, but I think people might be listening. The fact of the matter is that when we give you a paper length or we give you a word count, it's BS. It's irrelevant. What we're doing is we're putting restrictions on your thinking, right? The way I look at it is, when you have a topic and you choose a topic that you're going to write about, your job is to give the paper life. Every single topic has a different set of questions that are associated with it. So, if you really want to write a really good paper for me, here's what you do. You frame the question and you answer it. And if it just so happens you have to write a 20-page paper on a 1-page assignment, then by God you do that. Why? The reason is because everything has its own life. Every sale has its own life, right? Every relationship has its own life. Some relationships last for a day, some of them an evening, some of them last for 50 years, right? So how am I going to say, this relationship that you're in should last for 3 weeks and 4 hours? I can't do it. Every sale, every time you go to buy a car, it might take you 2 years to buy the car. You might buy it on the spot, but that has its own life. So what I want you to do, Natalie, is pay attention to giving it life. And I'm going to be back to that in a second. So you're saying that law and order provides that people are evil. Amanda, what it assumes, the law and order assumes that people are inherently evil, that they're inherently wrongdoers. And because of that, we create the law to protect one another from them. Now, back to Natalie. Yeah, for me, forget about word count. Forget about word count. I don't give a damn about word count. I just don't. Because I find that it stifles your thinking, all right? And I really, literally do not want people stifled. I want you to grow. I want you to control your thinking. But here's what's more important, all right? Just like there are philosophies between us being either good or evil, there's also philosophies on what education should look like. Now, you just so happen that you came up, you're welcome, you came up with a perspective that is completely reflective of the education system that you're in. In other words, there are two types of education systems. There are transactional education systems and transformative educational systems. You have been socialized and raised in a transactional world. In other words, here's what it means. In Florida, in Miami, when you graduate high school, you have to take that, what is it called, the FCAT, or whatever the multiple choice exam is. So here's what happens. You go through an education system where you are taught to master what the master is telling you. Simon, we're coming back to the WhatsApp later. All right, we're going to come back to that later, not right now, because I don't want the distractions. Okay, so you go through schooling, and the majority of your articulation of your knowledge isn't even yours. The articulation of your knowledge is what did the book say and what did your teacher say. And then when you look at the multiple choice exam, you're spending all your time trying to figure out what is it they are asking me to recycle, rather than asking you how do you break down the question, how do you think it through. So here's how a transactional education works. You all have talent. You wouldn't be in college if you didn't have talent, okay? So you have this talent that you can do what I do. It's not hard. You just have to read and you have to do your homework, okay? And you do it enough years in a row. You do it 11 straight years. All of a sudden, magically, you have a PhD. But I don't assume that I know more or less than you. I just have this training. All right. So here's how you're trained. You're trained to come in. You pay to sit in that chair. And then when you sit in that chair, we exchange with you a syllabus. And from that syllabus, you exchange back to us whatever the assignments are. Just so happens, because classes are a little bit larger, we exchange a multiple choice response, a series of multiple response questions, so that we can get a number. And that number represents a grade. And then we get a grade and it goes on our transcript. You get enough grades on your transcript, then one day we hand you a diploma, right? So you've gone through a whole entire education transacting back and forth. It's just a negotiation process, right? It's just you pay, you do, you get. You pay, you do, you get. And here's what I learned a long time ago, probably 25 years ago. I had some great students in my career. Oh my God, I've had some of the smartest people. I have students that were so far more advanced and smart than me, it blows my mind. I'll tell them, I said, man, if I had your brain, I'd have been dangerous. So anyhow, here's what happens. I noticed that at the end of, when we go to graduation, right, you've forgotten 95% of everything you learned. All these concepts that you crammed and crammed and crammed to learn for that exam, they say that 50 to 60% of everything you cram for, you forget within the hour or 2 hours after you take that test, let alone at the end of 4 years. So if you take biology in your first year, the odds of you remembering biology is going to be very low, especially the specific definitions that you spent all that time memorizing. So in a transactional education system, you're constantly memorizing so that you can fulfill an answer on a multiple choice test. To me, that's not thinking. How's that thinking? That is you walking in someone else's shadow. To me, transformative education is the way in which I like to look at it. And that is, what can you take from this class that will make your life better? What are the skills that you can take from here that you can use in interviewing, that you can use in your resume, that you can use when you're having a conversation with a significant other, or you have to go give a speech for somebody? What are the skills that you can take with you that are going to transform your life? What are the philosophies that you can develop that you haven't had before, that you can utilize to make your life a little bit better? To me, the whole idea of education is to transform you from an earlier self to a later self, from a self in which you are dictated to copy what other people tell you to think, to a person who thinks for themselves and can construct the world for themselves. And here's the reason why it is so important right now for you to be able to think for yourself and not to follow the pack. Right now, as we speak, we are watching the transformation of the world in which we live, right? It is the greatest transformation in human history. According to Moore's law, which is where we can crunch more data in a shorter amount of time for a lot less money, right? So Moore's law says as time goes by, we crunch more data, the cost of the technology goes down, 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 but the speed by which the technology works increases. Take NVIDIA for a second. NVIDIA, which does all your gaming chips and self-driving cars, they have a microchip that can compute 1 trillion calculations in 1 second. Let that sink in for a second, right? If you think that the ability to break down and analyze numbers at that level isn't going to affect your life, it is. Artificial intelligence, robotics, coronavirus, right? All these things are transformative. And if you are following a pack waiting for someone to give you a multiple choice question, but you're not thinking for yourself and you're not analyzing how you can fit into this change, baby, it's going to run you down. It's going to run you down. And then you're just going to be blown around like the wind. So my job, the way I look at it is to help you think, right? To give your ideas life. Therefore, when I have a paper, I give you a page length because I have to, because my boss says so. But when I speak to you in real life, I'm like, you give that thing life and you let it express itself, right? I'm going to give you the structure to use to express yourself, but baby, when you get it, you're going to be on fire. Now, here's what all that means. This is why it's so critical, right? This is all tied to human nature. If we thought you could think for yourself, we wouldn't demand you to follow what we say, right? If human nature is something that is fixed, then you would assume that you know who I am without ever asking who I am, right? Because here's what we do when we talk about common sense. Once we have a perspective on what we think human nature is, either inherently good, inherently evil, whatever that is, we believe that for some reason we can take a look at the outer shell of a human being and make predictions and assumptions about who they are. right? We do it all the time. Because if you don't think you do, just sit back and think about when you're in high school and the group of people that you associated with, what did they do? They made assessments of other groups of people, right? And those people made assessments of you. And sometimes, if we take a look at it real closely, those people who we associate with are a really strong reflection of our own worldview, right? Because here's what common sense does. Here's what common sense does. Common sense is a shared way of thinking, right? It's a shared consciousness, if you want terminology. And where does it come from? What's your name? Your name is Natalie. We have Simon. We have Nicole. We have Cesar. Look, there is no reason that's your name. And there's no reason that you should be responding to that as your name. Except at some point, when you were born, two people, probably your parents, they said, look, there's Natalie. They call you Natalie. They treat you as Natalie. And then you start to respond to Natalie as Natalie. And you, by virtue of that construction, become Natalie. And they start to teach you their worldview, right? And then as you're growing up, the worldview that you initially have is nothing more than a transformation or an absorption of a socialization of what your parents believe, okay? So here's what happens. You start to learn from your primary socialization agents, your parents. And you start to see a worldview that oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes reflects your parents, especially when you're young. Then you go to school, and who do you find as friends? People who have a similar worldview as you, or someone who might look like you and share a worldview as you. Now all of a sudden, you're reinforcing what you already know. Now here's where it gets really cool, right? So what that means is that your common sense comes from three sources. The first source where it comes from is word of mouth. That is the nature of the people you associate with, right? You enforce and you reinforce, you socialize and re-socialize people to have a similar belief system. And here's why it's important. Because the reason why common sense is important is because it allows you to fit in to environments that you are familiar with, right? It allows us ease of belonging, right? So when you went from high school to college, you went from sitting facing the front to a room sitting facing the front, where some older person like myself taught you, and then you listened. And then you go to college and someone older like myself talks and teaches you to listen, and you listen. Now, don't forget, I started teaching college when I was your age. I was 20 the first time I started teaching, and then I was 21 when I had my own classes. So I wasn't always this age. I started out, I was pretty much like you. The second place from which common sense is developed is the media, right? So your primary socialization are the people that you associate with, and then, baby, it's the media, right? Then the media shares with you information, and here's what they do. Here's what they do. Whether you're watching CNN or you're watching Fox, MSNBC, I don't know, TMZ, they're all showing you the protests. They're all showing you the divide. The difference is their interpretation of the divide is coming from a different angle. But they're showing you the same news event. So here's what people typically do. They go to the channel that most reflects what they believe, right? Because what we do is there's so much information in our daily lives that we can't incorporate all of it. So what we try to do is we try to find that information that supports it, right? So rather than questioning our beliefs, we go to the source that reinforces it. And here's what happens. It's called selective perception, selective attention. If this is our view of the world, we're more likely to gravitate towards a medium, right, that supports the way in which we think. Because if you take a look at it, how many of us go around saying, I want to find something that makes me feel uncomfortable with my belief systems? That's what I want. I don't want to fit in. I want to be an outsider, and I want to be treated like a miscreant. That's what I want. I can't wait for it. I want to be poor. I want to be abused. And I want to be somebody who doesn't fit in, right? Who does that? Who? Most people are trying to fit into something. And with all the information out there, they're not trying to critique themselves. How do I know? Have you ever watched where arguments arise from in your daily life? Politics and religion. Why is that? Why is it if two or three or four people get into a conversation about politics and religion that it always ends up in an argument, or predominantly ends up in an argument? The reason is simple. The reason is that when you have a belief that you hold near and dear to your heart, and it defines who you are as a person, it defines your identity, and it defines your sense of self. If it defines your common sense, then you're going to adhere to that because you don't want to destroy your sense of self and your identity, right? So what happens is this emotional release that we have by playing the role ends up expressing itself in an argument, whether it's religion or politics, right? And so what happens is our common sense ends up becoming something that divides us. And it divides us in some very nefarious ways. We're a very divided society in terms of race, in terms of social class. Now they don't want to open their minds. Because here it is, Amanda, if they open their minds, that means not only do they have to question the system that as it operates, they have to question their own belief system. And most people would rather feel comfortable than uncomfortable. And so therefore, we gravitate to those who tend to reflect our way of thinking, our life cycle base, where we are in our life cycle, right? And so what happens is that constant reproduction of these belief systems and this common sense, it creates boundaries between groups of people, right? So for example, that wall that we were going to build between Mexico and the United States, it was more than just a wall. It was a symbolic representation of xenophobia, right? I mean, it represented a dislike for a particular group of people by another group of people. And the wall was a boundary because, look, there's more people immigrating into the United States out of Canada than there are Mexico, or if it's not more, it's a similar amount. I mean, the percentages are not vastly different. So why, if we're really worried about people coming into the United States and taking our jobs, we should be building a wall from Canada and the U.S., but we never bring that up. We never bring up building a wall to the ports where people are coming in through airports and the ships coming in from Europe, they're coming in from Asian countries and trained to get some of those jobs. We're not doing that. We're doing it because we have a specific set of beliefs that say that this group of people is a threat to our well-being. And the best way to do it is you pick a violent offense like we did in San Francisco. One person, and it was a horrible case. Now, I'm not condoning the case. It's just what happened. And what happens, this immigrant, an illegal immigrant, kills this woman and this child, which is horrible. I'm not condoning it. But when we take a look at the rate of homicide from illegal immigrants is far lower than people who are born in the United States. The rate per 100,000 is higher for people who are born here than people not born here. So really, if we wanted to say, think about it. If you're illegally here from another country, do you really want to bring the spotlight on yourself? Probably not, right? So we take a look at where are our boundaries. Yes, of course. You're right, Janine. Where are the boundaries, where they come from? Let me give you a nice example, an easy example on how this stuff works, right? Now, when I teach a live class, I'm not coming in a polo on the first night. I'm shaving. You know, I don't have my Ohio State hat on. I definitely don't have that hat on. I don't have the bandana underneath. The reason I wear a bandana is because I don't want to buy another hat. I'm walking in the Arizona sun, the Miami sun. I sweat. And, you know, it gets up into the bill and all this kind of stuff. And I don't want to throw my hat away, so I wear a bandana so that I don't ruin my stuff. But it does hurt our economy in some very profound ways, Amanda. Now, and we'll get into that stuff later when we talk about economic systems. Now, when I walk into a classroom, right, it's pretty clear that I'm a white male, right? You take a look at my face, if I've let it grow out like this, you see the gray. If you've done any research, you see that I have a PhD, right? So it's Sean Schwaner, PhD, or Dr. Sean Schwaner. And then if you dug a little deeper, you'd see I got my PhD from Ohio State, which was, at the time, and is, the number one ranked sociology department in the country, right? And then you see, you know, it looks like I have money because I'm wearing nice clothes and shoes and everything like that. And you look at these surface elements of what are they called, markers and indicators of who we are. And you make certain assumptions that this white male professor is a professor and he's smart, right? Or else he wouldn't have a PhD. And when you take a look at it, you don't know anything about me, right? You don't know a darn thing about me. You just know this shell. Because if you knew about me, and you can't look at my facial features, I was raised in an African-American family, right? My mother didn't want me. She had been brutally abused as a little girl by my grandmother, brutally. It's the kind of stuff that was made for movies, right? You know, beaten every day with a cord or a coat hanger. She was ironed with an iron. my grandmother would jam her head into a coal-burning furnace and say, if you make a noise while I'm at work, I'll throw your whole body in with your brother, my uncle. And that's a brutal way to be raised every single day, beaten every single day. Malnourished, she was only 4'10" because they never had any kind of nutrients. And then she was supposed to do well in school, right? Hungry every day, and then you go to school and you're coming home to a family situation where you know you're going to get beaten for doing nothing wrong. And it's really hard to focus on school, but yet and still the teachers treated her as if she was stupid, and it's really unfair. But in any case, she had the ability to care beaten right out of her. So when she was impregnated with me, she had to make a decision between abortion and or adoption. So she's crying on the heating vent at Mama Green's house, who's in Dear Mama, Melissa, which you're all going to read. So you take a look at Dear Mama, and my mom is standing on the heater. Mama Green is the one who raised me. Her daughter was Irma Jean, my mom's best friend. And then there was Daddy Green. So Mama Green looks at my mother crying, and she asks Irma Jean, why is she crying, Jean? And Irma Jean says, well, she's pregnant, Ma, and I don't know if she's not going to be able to keep the baby. And Mama Green looked over at my mother. My mom's 4'10", Mama Green was 5'4", weighed 250 with hands that were like monster hands. They were as big as Julius Erving's. Susie, you know, she said, if a mother dog has puppies and they don't have a place to live, the mother dog will go find a home and then go take each puppy by the scruff of its neck to that new home until all those puppies are there. Susie, if you don't keep your baby, you're going to be lower than that dog. However, I know that you don't have any money, and I know you're living in the storage room of a pizza parlor, and I know that, you know, it's kind of rough for you, and that you're in your first job. So, Susie, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. Me and Leo, Daddy Green, we will raise your son for you. We will raise your baby, and you don't have to pay us. So the first 12 years of my life was spent with Mama Green. Now, I will tell you this, we lived in the urban inner city. We grew up in the ghetto. Trust me, it was straight out ghetto. My friends used to come to my house from school, because I went to a private school. They used to come to my house because they wanted to see what it was like to be urban, right? So they'd come over and all that kind of stuff. They didn't come over often because many of them were afraid. In any case, I was surrounded by violence every day of my life. Every day of my life I spent wondering who was going to die a violent death. Was it going to be at Mama Green's house? I saw her shoot a burglar, right? Was it going to be at my house? Was it going to be Irma Jean, Daddy Green, my mom, me? And every day I worried whether the gangs were going to beat me down or whether it was going to be a sexual predator because our neighborhood was loaded with them, or was it going to be someone in my own house, right? And so I grew up in absolute terror. You can't see that today, can you? You can't see that I was absolutely afraid of every moment of my childhood. People saw it in my face. They said, man, you're tormented. But when I had a basketball in my hand, they were like, man, you're a whole different human being. You can't tell by looking at me that I was poor. You can't look at me and see that I was raised in an African-American family. And you can't see that I went to a great private school. All you can see is what's on the surface, and that's what you make your assessment on. You understand? We use these stereotypes and treat people as if we know those people without ever knowing them at all. So like if we were in a live class right now, right? I could look at you, I can see your skin tone, I can see your eye color, I can see what you're wearing, but do you really think that because I can see that, I know you? What I've learned through the turmoil that I had and that my mother had is that we all wear a mask, right? Because we're trying to protect our identity from other people harming us. And here's what's amazing about it. When you sit in that seat, I make the assumption that something's going on in your life. That if it is a boundary or a barrier, you can't give me your best, right? If you're going through suicidal ideation, how are you going to give me your best? If you're in a domestic violence relationship, a dating violence relationship, how are you going to come in here and give me your best? How are you going to go home and hear insults coming from the people who are supposed to love you, but you're supposed to focus in here and give me 110%? I make the assumption, right, that all of us wear masks. And I make the assumption that there's something incredible about you sitting in that chair, right? So I ask on the first day of class, why are you in here? Most people say, well, I want to get a grade. I need the prerequisites. I need, it's for graduation. It's for all these transactional purposes. But I don't think that's the reason why you're in class, myself. As a matter of fact, that's transactional thinking, and as long as you keep thinking that way, you're going to end up being blown around. I looked at your answers from the homework assignment. What was the most predominant answer? Most of you said, here's what you said first. I am a daughter, and I'm a sister. That was number 1 and 2. Number 3 was, I'm a student. Okay? So what that means is that when we see our identity, and you put your asterisk next to it, that means you see yourself in relationship to family, right? Now, when you say I am a daughter, I am a son, I'm a sister, those are all roles that you occupy, right? We define ourselves based upon the roles that we occupy. And with each role, there's a series of rules, expectations, regulations, and norms. All of them. Because when you act as a student, the rules, regulations, expectations, and norms are different than when you act as a daughter, or when you act as a sister, or when you act as a friend or a lover, or whatever it is. It changes every time. The rules are created based upon the position that you occupy relative to other people. Here's where it gets complicated. If that's true, and it is true, that means in each context, you wear a different mask, right? You wear a different set of scripts, a different set of expectations, and therefore you become a different person in every relationship, which means who you are and what you are at any given moment is socially constructed based upon who it is you're acting with. You are socially constructed. Your beliefs, your emotions. Look, when you occupy the role of sister, your emotional response is different than when you occupy the position as student. What's going to make you cry, what's going to make you happy are going to be different. But they're going to be similar to other people who occupy the position of sister. When I occupy the role of father, which is every day, I feel happiness, I feel joy, I feel concern, right? I want to make sure I've done the right thing. When other people occupy the same position, I've had hundreds of them in class, they say the same thing. Makes me happy, sometimes I'm frustrated, I'm joyful, and sometimes I'm concerned. Well, if we're unique individuals, then our emotions should be different than other people. Our expression should be different. The nature of our language should be different. Instead, what we find is there are common patterns as to how people act when they play a role, which means who you are and what you are is not so unique as you think. It is a socially constructed, it's an expectation that is socially derived. Okay? Now, if the people you're associating with, all right, hate this group over here, you have higher odds of hating that group too, right? If we see this group over here as compadres, then you're likely to see the same thing. In other words, we are social creatures. We are in a social contract with one another, right? At all times. Here's why you're in college, all right? On the other side, you put down, I am happy, I am funny, I am nice, I am mean, I am rude, I am amicable, I'm resilient, I'm a hard worker, I'm industrious. You put all those things down. And a lot of them are great characteristics to have. But there's one that no one ever puts down. And I've been doing this for 5 years, this exercise for 5 years. Never once has anybody put down on that piece of paper, I am great. Why? Why not? Is it because we define it as conceited, self-centered, right? Cocky? Here's what I think. I think you were dealt one life. And in that life, if you can't see yourself as great, how are you ever going to achieve the ultimate dream that you want for yourself? If you have a purpose in this life and you can't see yourself as great, how do you ever say, I'm worthy of my dreams? If you can't see yourself as great, how can you ever be worthy of the love that you deserve in this lifetime? How can you ever deserve to be paid what you're worth if you can't see your own greatness? Because when you sit in that seat, what I know is that everyone in that seat has greatness. It's different than the other person's, but you have greatness. And what we do in a transactional education system is we take away the greatness and we ask you to follow, hey Christian, we ask you to follow what everybody else says to do. Rather than saying, you find yourself and you find your greatness like Socrates says, know thyself, know thy greatness. Because every single thing that you can contribute to this world, you all have the ability to be Mama Green. All of you, right? But we teach you to be like the pack and to accept what the system says to accept, rather than saying, you know what, the system may not fit me. I need to be entrepreneurial. I need to see what my skills are and put my skills right into the system. And here's the other reason. Here's why you're in college. You're not here to memorize the terminology. The only reason you memorize the terminology is when you get a master's degree. And the only time you know who said the terms is when you get a PhD. Other than that, I'd love to see you think for yourself. Because the more you think for yourself, trust me, ignorance is bliss. There's a reason. Because once you start thinking and that light bulb goes off, no one can dictate to you who you're supposed to be, under what circumstances you're supposed to be that, and why you're supposed to be it. Once you obtain control, there's a dual-edged sword. One, you're going to stand on your own. You have to stand by yourself when you're strong and you stand away from the flock. And then something amazing will happen. Once you know what your greatness is, and once you figure out what your purpose is, now you can come up with a plan, baby. Because most people don't have a plan. They just get blown around. One job to the next, to the next, to the next. If you have a plan, you got something you can execute. Here's why you're in college. Number one is to learn how to communicate effectively. Forget about the terminology. It's good to know some of it, right? But it's more important to be able to come away with what's important to understand in the world as we know it, right? So, learn to communicate effectively. That's number one. When I entered into kindergarten, I had what was my IQ? It was 104, right? Average is 112. But when I graduated high school, I had a 159 IQ. How does a kid from the east side go from having a 104 to a 159? If we believe that IQ is genetic, it should have been 104 when I graduated. Why did it go up 55 spots? The reason it went up was simply because I learned how to think for myself. I learned the language of those people who write the exams, the SATs, the ACTs, etc. And when I learned that language, I was able to rise up in the social economic system. That's where the American dream came from, my ability to adapt utilizing language. That's number one. Number two, and this is one we don't do, right? And this one drives me crazy. When I see people on this thing in the classroom, playing pool, playing these little games, or texting someone they already know. If you're broke right now, and you're texting the same person that's in your life that maintains that brokenness, why? You have 30 other people sitting in this class that you could meet. And these 30 other people have linkages into the opportunity system. They have networks that may actually hold the key to your future. So we are sitting here oftentimes communicating with someone who's hurting us privately, who's calling us names, who's deriding us or what have you. We're texting them rather than meeting these other persons that have the potential to elevate you to the highest heights. I had a student back in 2012 at Miami-Dade College North Campus. This guy was about 6'2", 6'3", kind of boisterous. He goes, I cannot believe I could never get a job interview with Homeland Security. And they call him a bunch of names. I want a job with Homeland Security. And he's standing up doing this, right? He's like, and he's calling them names and all this. I have the skills to be in this. He goes on this rant, and at the end of class, a student that was sitting right behind him says, I'm a manager of Homeland Security. I could have got him a job this evening, but instead he will never be hired with the Department of Homeland Security acting like that. The person sitting next to you on the bus, the person in the restaurant, the person in that classroom, they may hold the key to your life, and you text it away with somebody you already know, especially if it's someone that brings you down. So one, learn to communicate. Two, build your network, baby. If someone brings you down, if they don't have the same drive and determination as you have to move up in your career and fulfill your purpose and find your greatness, put them on the bench. You don't have to dislike them. You don't have to judge them. Put them on the bench. Surround yourself with the people who believe in you, who will edify you, who will stand up for you, who might have emotional resources you need, who might have spiritual resources you need, perhaps financial, perhaps they have professional resources you need. Build your team with people who can hold you up rather than building your team with people who are going to knock you down. Because it makes it that much harder. So what does that mean? You didn't know all this was coming at you, did you? Here's what it all means. right? If you go back to that short 8-minute video called Who Am I? The short one with the little diagram in it, go to that thing. When you see yourself as a daughter, you are part of the family institution. Oh, by the way, an institution is a set of interrelated social structures designed to meet basic human needs. An interrelated set of social structures designed to meet basic human needs. A social structure is a pattern of accepted behavior or a pattern of unacceptable behavior, but it's a pattern of behavior. So there's the economic institution, right? Capitalist system. And here's what we know about institutions. They're greater than you as an individual. Because the capitalist institution existed before you were ever born and is going to exist after you pass away. It has a greater life than you. If you pass away today, you think capitalism is going to end? No, because the institution is greater than you. If you perish today, is Christianity going to disappear? No. Is mass education going to disappear? Of course not. Is policing, criminal justice going to disappear because you're not here? No. The media? No. Right? The political system? No. It's going to continue to exist. So in other words, if you take a look at the economic institution, the political institution, the education institution, the religious institution, the media institution, all of these institutions work together to create this thing called society. That's what society is. Society is an overlapping system of institutions. What does that mean? What that means is that in every moment of every day of your life is shaped by your relationship to, your social placement with, the dominant institutions. The institutions create for you the context for your behavior. The context, right? Arising out of those institutions are the opportunity structures. So your relationship to the opportunity structures is what's going to define you and your long-term career. So if you grew up in the inner city like I did, and all you do is hang out with drug addicts and drug dealers and gang members, well, your access into the system, it's going to be really hard for you to go to law school. It's going to be really hard for you to go to medical school. It could happen, but if this is your network into the social location, it is much more likely that you're going to continue to associate with gang members, drug dealers, etc. Right? If you want to become an attorney, maybe you get an internship with your best friend's father or mother who's an attorney. Now you got a letter of recommendation. You get to know that one professor. You got another letter of recommendation. You work for, I don't care, Lime, the restaurant. If Bobby writes you a letter of recommendation, we can say she or he's a great employee. She or he has a great mind for law. He or she has great study habits. Now, boom, you have entryway into law. But if OG Bobby Johnson or Monster Cody Scott or Kilo, all A-Tray gangster crips from California, write you a letter of recommendation to become an attorney, it may fall on deaf ears, right? But you may be able to get a position with the Rolling 60s, but you're not probably going to get a position with the largest law firm in Los Angeles. Why? That's because the nature of your networks provides you with an inroad into the opportunity structure. So society shapes opportunity structures shape the networks, then the networks shape the small groups to which you belong. Right? That is what you call a macro perspective of, thank you, Kristen. That's a macro perspective of human behavior. Institutions shape the context in which people behave. By the way, if you were to take a look at the protests, you can take a look at it the same way. Where are you in the structure, and how are you portrayed in terms of your behavior? Those who have least power are more likely to be portrayed as the greatest threat. Those who have more power are more likely to be portrayed as the ones who are not the greatest threat. So let's take a look at gun violence for just 1 second, right? And I'm going to come back to something else that's really important. If we take a look at, we're really sensitive to gun violence, especially when there's a mass shooting, right? Ban guns, or everyone should have one. I got the Second Amendment right. You don't have the right to carry a firearm, a semi-automatic, etc., etc. I think both arguments are ridiculous, honestly, because when we're talking about that, what we're talking about is those people who are mentally unstable, the mass murders. Well, they must be crazy. And then we want them to be crazy, because if they're crazy, that means we don't have to pay attention to the system of structural inequality that shaped the context in which they behaved. Because if we don't have to address the context, the structural conditions, then we don't have to change them, right? That's huge. Because if we wanted to address it, we address it through the education institution, the economic institution. And let's go one step further. Watch this. You're going to love this. So when we think of violent crime, and I did this for my other classes, so I'll just gloss over it. When we think about violent crime, we think urban, minority, we think social disadvantage, right? We think violent crime, homicide, where people kill each other on the street. By the way, you're more likely to die in your home, and you're more likely to die, you're most likely, if you're going to get murdered, you're going to get murdered by your friend, not someone who's a stranger. And if you get murdered by your friend, why is it? It's because both of you are under the influence of alcohol. Right? So we don't address the nature of alcohol when it comes to homicidal violence. Instead, we paint this picture that it's urban, inner city, and all these kind of things. Take out the alcohol. Well, alcohol changes the scripts of behavior. Come back to all that later. Right? We focus violent crime, lethal violence, on the streets because the group is powerless against the media. But watch this. Last year, there were about 16,500 homicides in the United States. 16,500. There were 32,000 suicides, twice as many. Most of which, over half, about 60%, were with a firearm. And who was the one that pulled the trigger? The highest rate of suicide are white males 45 to 54 years old. So if you really want to take a look at where lethal violence comes from in the United States, it comes from white males who are 45 to 54. Those are the most violent people in our society, and yet still we don't portray them as violent. We portray them as hard-working, industrious, corporate, political figures. See the difference? So if we really want to take a look at where that violence comes from, we'd have to reconfigure the way in which our society operates, and it would take too much money in the overthrow of power. So pay careful attention to the way in which common sense is lined up for us. Because common sense is framed for us. Now watch this. Nicole, I sure hope so, baby, because that is where all the answers lie. It's not in blind following of a power. You know, being a lemming isn't going to take us anywhere. When we learn to think for ourselves, then we can learn to take control of our lives and strive for our greatness. Now watch this. My throat's starting to hurt. I've been doing this for like 4 of the last 5 hours. Okay, watch this. So if our identity and sense of self is socially constructed in our relationships with others, that means that who we are in this very moment is the accumulation of all events that have led up to this moment. We may not remember them all, but they all affect us some way or another, right? All those phenomena that we experience shape us. The word for that is called phenomenology. Oh, I can write that in here, I forget. Phenomenology is the concept that we learn to construct the world and our language through all the phenomena that we learn over time. So, whereas there's always a context in which we behave, there's also a process in which we become. We're constantly becoming, right? We're not fixed. We're not something that is an inanimate object. We always have the possibility for change, and we will always change because phenomena will shift in our lives. Now watch this. Along the way, these phenomena, when we learn from other people, we also learn which groups we define as a threat. We define which groups that we're going to create as troublemakers, as deviants, as those who are going to be our friends, as those who are going to be our enemies. You know, I don't like anyone from the University of Michigan because I'm an Ohio State Buckeye, but it's ridiculous. But if I see someone wearing maize and blue, oh my God, the hair on my neck starts to stand up, and my hair on my face comes out like Pompero Firpo, who you don't know, a wrestler from the 1970s. And then I say, my God, Sean, there's nothing wrong with them. They're the same as you. We're both fans, right, of a team we both identify with. But we learn to create these categories and act as if the categories are true, and then we have emotional response to it. We learn to identify the categories. When we start to identify groups in accordance to their category, that's where hatred comes from, right? So hate and social boundaries are constructed through our experience within this system. Now watch this, all right? In every interaction, we have the ability to help someone else's life. Sometimes people are broken and we walk by them. Sometimes they're abused and we don't look. Sometimes people are hurting and we turn our heads. When my mother was pregnant with me, Brianna's absolutely, you're absolutely right. Now I have you on my list, let me put you down. Mama Green was raised brutally in the 1910s, 1920s. Somehow she had a heart. She was extremely tough, but she had a heart. And she told my mother in an interactive context shaped by the civil rights movement and all the anti-disestablishmentarian type of behaviors that were taking place, and we'll talk about that term later. And she extended her hand to me, to my mother, so that I could have a life. And since then, I've written 6 books, 8 really, well 9 actually. Dissertation, my senior thesis were both 270 pages. Then I did write a book at University of Louisville that I chose not to publish because I didn't want their name next to mine. Ridiculous. The Social Construction of the Ghetto Prison Pipeline was the first book I wrote. I didn't publish it. But anyhow, think about this. Because of her, I get a life. And in my life, I've had 20,000 students who I have taught in 500 different classes. And some of those students have gone off and got a PhD. Some of them become lawyers. I have them at the Department of Homeland Security, police chiefs, things all over the country. I have all these people who are employed. But what you don't see, and the reason why I tell you that I know you wear a mask, and that if you do wear a mask, you need someone to turn to, you turn to me. If you're in a domestic violence situation, a dating violence situation, you turn to me. And do not be afraid. If people are bringing you down, put them on the bench and bring in people that are going to hold you up. I've had at least 25 or 30 people who are going to commit suicide. They're sitting in the room, they're happy, but they come to me and say, you know what, I can't go on. 25 or 30. Now, they've gone on and they've had these really good lives. And one of them in particular, she was going to off herself because she lost her house to income taxes. And it was the house that her parents had. And she had 2 little kids. And she had lost her focus in class and she was sitting in the front row. And I'm like, can I speak to you after class? Yeah, and she told me what was going on. And I said, you just hold on. All right, we'll work with single stop. We'll figure out how to get you through, but just hold on. Don't worry about your homework right now. Don't do your homework. You just come listen and talk to me. A week later, 2 weeks later, her church gave her a full ride scholarship to go to Florida A&M University. And they paid for her rent so she and her kids could have a home up in Tallahassee. She got her degree and she's now in a PhD program. Can you imagine if I had said, you're not welcome to speak to me about your personal issues because the bureaucratic process at Miami-Dade College says I'm not certified to answer your questions. Instead, because I had to wear a mask all the way through my childhood, I extend my hand and I lifted her up, and she had the skill inside of her. It's just a matter she couldn't see it, right? So in each moment, we have opportunities to change the course and the direction of history. And there is someone right now being born in this world who 20 years from now is going to need that pain, that darkness that you walked through, your transformation into the light, and the realization that you could find your greatness. Someone's going to need that. And you're going to have a choice in about 20 years where you're going to say, I can take what happened to me and make your life better, or you can say, I'm going to keep on walking, and you can go ahead and dwell in this gutter where you lay. The choice is yours. But every time you lift somebody up, you may be lifting the very person that saves your own children's life. Think about that one, right? Think about that. You may be saving the person who one day will turn around and save your son or daughter's life. That's a heavy responsibility to bear, baby. There you have it. Social environment, right? The overlap between institutional context and interactive definitions. Now you've had the whole class. Now we can get busy. You have your what will life look like in 2040 next week. Own it. I don't want 700 questions about it. You own it and you write it as you understand it. It is due next Tuesday at 11:59. I prefer you to submit it through Blackboard, but if you cannot, you go ahead and submit it right through the email. It takes me about 2 weeks to turn stuff around, so be patient. The first assignments aren't nearly as important as the ones that are forthcoming, but they're going to become more and more important. You own and control the direction of your life. Me, I'm just a guide. That's all I am. All right? I hope so. I hope so, Jessica. And you know what? I'm going to ask, maybe I'll call the virtual college and ask them how to do it. Maybe that's what I should do. Yes, as an attachment, that'd be perfect. Let me just see by a show of yays or nays or yes. How many of you appreciated or liked or enjoyed today's lecture? Was it okay? Because, you know, I'm not used to doing this remote stuff. I'm much better in a real life environment. How was it? Was it okay for you today? Just curious. I know there's a, what is it? It's like a 12-second delay between me asking a question and you all answering it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, good, good. Okay. Well, everyone, now remember, Simon wants to know about the WhatsApp. Those of you who are in WhatsApp, oh, thank you. Awesome. Well, let me just say that your participation on the chat board made a difference. Do not over worry about your confusions and know that I'm very, very flexible. I will be here to help you. But you have now had a real, all right, Christian, Nicole, you've had a real dose now of what social environment is going to be like. I'm about to lose my throat or my voice, and I got another class coming up at 5:40 in a couple hours. I'm going to go have to rest this baby. But you were great today. I'm glad you were here. Let's make sure we get everybody else here in 2 weeks. That's when the next live stream is going to be. And I'll give you something, a video of some type next week, just to kind of guide you through. But for now, I'm going to clock off here and go get some salt water and gargle my throat so it doesn't hurt, so I can teach tonight's class. And I want to wish you a great couple of weeks. Feel free to text me if you have questions, and we're going to make this semester great. All right? You all take care. Have a great day. Social environment checking out. You're welcome.